if you hold crypto, you are a fool not looking at selling. I'm selling freaking everything near the end of 2025. All of it. I am not holding anything because, kind of like you said, Lawrence, the crypto is very much so tied to everything else. If the stock market goes down, so does crypto. If the economy performs poorly, so does crypto. Now, there could be this like event where that changes, but I'm not willing to bet very much money on that outcome. So here's some of the mistakes I see a lot of new users make. They get wrapped up into the utility and life-changing technology and things of that nature. And I've got news for you. It doesn't matter.
Dane, it's such a pleasure to have you. I heard you on our mutual friend Nick Lemania's podcast, and you were awesome. And you talked about so many things. I feel like I got a crypto reminder. I kind of forgot a lot of the crypto theory, which I really enjoyed. But I love the stuff you said about just the way you look at your marriage and the way you see money as a tool to live a better life. So I know we're going to talk a lot about your background, but before we even start with that, I'd love to start with this, brother. How did you meet your wife?
Oh man, so I met my wife at a church of all places. In fact, this is a pretty cool story. This one's near and dear to me. So I'm somebody that's very spiritually oriented. I feel like I always have been, to be honest with you. I remember my mom tells a story how she would go to school and drop me off, and I'd come home from school and she'd say, "How was your day?" And I'd say, "It was fine." She said, "Oh, did you play with the kids today?" And my response a lot of the time was, "Well, I sat back and I watched the kids play." And understandably so, that's concerning as a parent. If my kid told me that, I would do exactly what she did, which is follow me to school. And she kind of hung out and around recess time wanted to observe what I meant. And I'm telling you, I remember this very distinctly. I would sit back and watch the kids because I was so interested in how they would engage. And I wanted to make sure that I could find ways to fit in. And so when I would feel lonely, even when I was a kid, I would pray. My parents taught me that, if you ever felt alone, you could always talk to God. And I would do that a lot, all of the time, every day and throughout my day. And honestly, it's really built me into the person that I am today. So with that being the background, I'm a Christian. I have been ever since I was born. I'm in it, man. I believe. And I would go to church in the summers. This was in my early 20s. I would go to school about an hour and a half away from where my parents live. And then when I was done with school during the summer semester, I'd go home to work to try to save a few bucks for school. And church, man, a lot of church is just finding where you fit. Like if you don't fit, I don't care how much you believe, it's just hard. It makes it hard. Yeah. And I found myself where I was going to a church by my parents' house. The first year I moved back with them after college, and I didn't fit. The people there were nice. It was great for them, but I truly didn't fit. And so I told myself the next summer when I went home that I would find a place that I fit. And so I want to be around people that were like me. And so in Utah, where I'm from, they have what they call student wards. And so you could go and hang out with other students, plug in, hang out with other college kids, go to church. And that's what I wanted. And so the University of Utah is the closest or one of the closest universities to my parents' house. So at the time I just Googled, I just got on and I was looking for, we call them wards in Utah. So instead of like, a church or something like that, we call them wards or congregations. And so I just looked for, student wards at the University of Utah. And there is a 9 o'clock time. I think there was a 9 o'clock and a 1 o'clock start time. And of course, early 20s, stay out late. So I'm going to go to church late, right? It's my preference. And I remember distinctly feeling, no, go to the early one. And I said, cool, I could follow along. So I did. And I showed up to church that very first time and it was bananas. Like, I show up, I met some friends from high school that I hadn't seen in years. It was cool to reconnect with them. One of my cousins that I hadn't seen in years, she went to that same ward, so I connected with her. And I actually met my wife that very first Sunday. And it was just like all these signs pointing towards, hey, like you're in the right place. And I think that's the most important thing that anyone can do in life is to develop a relationship with God so that you can discern when you're in the right place and when you're not. And it's a skill that you could build over time. And so I built that skill in my life, and I felt very much so that I was in the right place. And within about a month of being there and hanging out with the people is a perfect fit. One of the most fun summers I've ever had in my life. We just had a great time, and I met my wife, and she invited me and a group of us over to a birthday party for her. And this dude was there. This guy was flirting with her the whole night, and I was frustrated because she was the person I want to talk to. And this dude's flirting with her the whole night. I can't I'm trying to find my spot where I could shoot my shot, create some space. And it just never came. And I remember leaving the night feeling really frustrated. And so I was like, I'll just text her. So I did. So I just texted her and I said, the other guy's name was Tyler. And I said, hey, unless you have something serious going on with Tyler, I'd like to go out with you. So, what do you think? And she said, oh yeah, let's do it. And we hit it off, and I dated quite a few girls before her, and always problems, always freaking problems. My wife has been the most seamless relationship I've ever been in by a huge factor. And so that's not everyone's experience. I get it. But I think there's a lesson, and there's a lesson in there that I go by to this day where I use friction as an indicator from God of whether or not I'm heading in the right direction. So if I find something interesting that I want to engage in, whether that be a business opportunity or relationship, then I put some energy in that direction. And if there's a lot of friction, then I use that as a sign from God that typically that's hey, this isn't the direction for you. And if it comes together like a freaking magic trick, it's seamless, then I use that as a sign that hey, this is a path for you that's good. And I walk down it. And that's how it was with my wife. There are a few different things I had to overcome. She had an old boyfriend come back into her life, told her he had cancer and it was terminal. And so she tells me this, and I'm like, I don't know how to compete with that, right? And so she's like, well, I better see that relationship through. And I said, no, I get it. I'd probably do the same thing. And so she did. And a few weeks later, we were all hanging out in a group setting. Her boyfriend hadn't come. There's her and me and a bunch of our other friends. We were at this house party about to watch a movie. And a different girl I was trying to date was sitting on my right-hand side. She comes down and sits on my left-hand side. And I thought, oh, this will be interesting. Game on. Let's go. She takes a blanket, throws it over her and I over our laps, and grabs my hand. And I was like, well, I'm marking your territory here. And she came back. I was like, this boyfriend was always, didn't treat me well, and he's not treating me well now. And so I want to see where things go with you. And so that was our main hiccup. And things outside of that have been, for the most part, pretty freaking smooth sailing. I'm spoiled.
So Dane, how old were you when you guys started dating?
We started dating when how old was I? I think I was 20. We got married when I was 24. We were engaged for about a year, and we met before. So I was probably 22.
Okay.
And to give you context, this is crazy to say out loud. I felt so old at the time. And to give you more context, people in Utah if you're from Utah, people there tend to get married early. And so I was the last of my close high school friends not to be married at 22. The last one. I'm thinking there might be something wrong with me because I'm not engaged at 22. It's crazy to say out loud, but that was my perspective at the time, which is hilarious to see. But yeah, I was 22.
So did you feel old do you think you're an old soul? Or do you think it was just that the people just did everything so much younger there, and that was just normal for you?
I would say both. I try really hard. I learned, man, I could give you so many stories. I'll give you one. I went and I did so I belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and many people that go to that church, we go on missions is what they're called, and we go and we serve people in the world in a specific area for a couple of years for the men, and I think for the women it's 18 months if they, and it's a choice. You could choose to go, you don't have to go, right? And so I made that decision to go, and my mom and I we didn't get along well growing up. If you could pick like two people that are different in almost every way, I feel like me and my mom would be in the running for that. And I joke around still with my mom to this day. We got along really good once I moved into our basement when I was a teenager, so I could sneak out the window in the night and go do what I was going to do. We got along great after that until she found out, and then we had problems. And so when I was leaving on this religious mission, my dad came to me before and he said, Dane, like, you've got to do your best to make amends with this relationship. You can't leave on bad terms. And so I did, to what I thought that I had done an all right job, but I still had a lot of angst towards my mother. And I went on this mission. And one of the times, I'm telling you, we were sitting there in church, and the lesson that we were going through that day was all the things that a family can do, that parents can do to try to help their kids find God. And I remember thinking, this will be great to see all the things that my parents miss, specifically my mom. And every single one, there's a list of about 30 bullet points. Every single one of those things on that list, my parents had tried and tried diligently. And it was this enormous wake up call. It was like, hey, it's not your mom that's the problem in this equation, it's you. And so I try really, and I'm far from perfect, but I try really hard to be someone that can have the perspective where, like, I don't know everything, but being open to experience, open to what God will give me. And I felt in my heart at that time when I was looking for my wife, I felt a really strong desire to move my life in that direction. I really wanted to be in a committed relationship because I knew the data that backed being in a committed relationship, right? Like, you have more stability, you have someone to bet on, you have a place that is viable to bring children into the world, into a good place. Like, you have all of those things. And I'm someone that's very ambitious. I've got a lot of big goals. And I knew that having a wife, someone that would row with me and come with me on that journey would help a lot. And so that was a big focus at that time in my life. And so if you want to attribute that to being an old soul or what it may be, I don't know, but that gives you a little bit of context on kind of where my brain was at the time.
Well, Dane, I think that's a lot of wisdom at a young age, because I'll give you the opposite example. When I made a lot of money in my 20s through trading, and I was an amateur fighter, and I really wanted to pursue professional MMA for a few years.
Oh,
And
cool.
I
Okay.
was dating some girls, and in my head, my young brain, I was thinking to myself, this is a very selfish pursuit. So I want to do all this before I start my family. And then when I retired, before I met my wife, I was 35. And I thought the best days of my life are behind me. I'm just going to get older now. I'm never going to have this kind of physical prowess that I had. And I had all this money in my youth that I pretty much blew through. I didn't invest well. I made all these mistakes. So I was convinced that the best days of life were behind me. And today, 10 years later, I'm so much happier. I'm a family man like you. I'm married with a son. And I can't imagine the happiness that I have now, having a relationship just like you described. Before I met my wife, I was in the most toxic relationship I've ever had. And one of my good friends from England said, Lawrence, like, what are you doing with this girl? Square peg, round hole. You're completely you're uncompatible. Like, what are you doing? Stop trying to make it work when everything is not right. You're just not compatible. And then when I met my wife, it was just like you said, it was seamless, and we were just kindred spirits. And she moved in within a week, and we were engaged before the end of the year. So everything went very quickly.
You just fit, right?
Exactly.
You just fit.
But I guess the point is, I didn't know back then what I know now. And that's all, like you said, all the studies, like I've been thinking about this a lot just the last few years, but you knew this early 20s. All the studies say the biggest two contributors to someone's happiness is who your partner is and what you do for work, if you enjoy it or not. Those two big things. So the choice of who you get married to, who you start a family with, it's one of the most important decisions you can make. And I know a lot of very successful people who will spend years and years and years trying to build businesses, trying to grow their worlds, trying to make all these smart financial decisions, and they'll put almost no time into dating. And it's like, well, that you should come at it almost like a business, like how I'm going to meet someone who's aligned with me, who has the same kind of aspirations and goals and dreams for the future. And for you, I guess, I don't want to say it was easier, but you were in an environment where, like you said, you went there, you had family there, in your community, it was kind of normal to get married young. But I guess that brings me to the next point that I was really wanting to talk to you about. You mentioned this very briefly with Nick, and I have a good friend who's divorced, and I asked him, I said, he got divorced before I met him. And I said, what was the cause of your divorce? And he said, financial infidelity. And I'd never heard that before, but she was buying stuff that they couldn't afford. She was like addicted to shopping and buying stuff behind his back. And at the time, he didn't have much money, and they were starting a family. And I love you talked a little bit about some of the things you did with finances with your wife, which I'd love you to kind of talk about too. But I'd imagine the other thing is you guys met when you're so young, and you've accomplished so much. So I'm sure you've changed so much as a person. I think the secret to a successful relationship is you have to grow together, because even if you're in the same place in life, if one of you is growing and the other one's kind of staying the same, over time, you're just going to get further and further apart. So I'd love to talk a little bit about that too.
No, you nailed that. And I love the quote. It's like the grass is the most green where you water it, right? And today's like, right, today is social media, like there's always quote unquote greener grass out there, right? There's always another smoking hot lady out there that you could go do whatever your imagination could conjure up. And I think you nailed it. You need to grow together. And in fact, we had a really interesting conversation at an event that we spoke at I think it was last year, earlier this year, where there was this dude that came and sat down with me and some of my other entrepreneur friends. And a lot of people would disagree with me on this. But I'm telling you, I think this is a gem. What I'm going to tell you, I think here's a freaking gem. So this younger dude, early 20s, he said, hey, like, what would you guys do going back? And the conversation went towards women. And you see this advice all the time. And I just couldn't disagree with it more. They say like, stay focused on your business and making money and bang as many hot girls as you possibly can into your 40s. And then finally you'll get it all out of your system and you'll settle down. And I feel like that's terrible advice, because so many men don't, for a lot of reasons, so many men don't quote unquote ever get that out of their system. For many 100%. People, it's an itch that you can scratch and it never goes away. So you build this habit for years of this behavior with women and how you see them, that makes it that, frankly, you're less likely to find somebody to settle down with, to have children with, to build a future where you are together, instead of, one where you're so worried about yourself. So my advice, this is personal. I don't talk about this a lot. I didn't sleep with anyone. I was a virgin when I got married. Wow. Which is pretty nuts to say. That was a big thing in my mind, is I wanted to have that experience. I wanted to save that for the person that I felt like I could bet on, right? That really wanted to build something with me. And I'm telling you, so many of the problems that my entrepreneur friends have ran into could have been solved if they just wore a condom or didn't have sex with people outside of their marriage. And so, I think that there's a lot to be said about getting married when you're younger. It gives you an opportunity, if you choose, to grow together, because that's all you have when you're young. Like, you have a vision and you have each other, and you probably don't have shit else. You know what I mean? You don't have anything else. Yeah, I have no money. I just have a vision that I'm trying to sell my wife on. I'm like, I'm a good bet because of this. Yes. And I think there's a lot to be said about that. I've got a lot of entrepreneur friends that have, like, quote unquote, made it today. And it's hard. Like, dating's hard out there. They've got to determine, hey, like, what women are that they're attracted to, want to be with them because of the financial benefits that they could bring, versus actually love them and want to build some. Like, that is difficult. And frankly, I never had to face that because I got married younger when I had nothing. And so yeah, take that for what you will. That's my perspective. I think it's important.
Yeah,
Yeah, let's you want to go to
I couldn't
finances
agree more.
next?
Yeah, I'd love to because I think I've noticed, and it's real minor, but sometimes I'll bicker with my wife about that, where she just we've got this very intelligent, curious boy. He's turning 4, and so she used to study childhood education, and she's always like buying these, and they're cheap. It's not about the money. It's about she keeps buying these little things for him to challenge different parts of his brain.
Constant gratification.
Yeah, but I'm telling her, I'm like, baby, like this house is just getting filled with stuff. We got to just we're tripping over things here. She's like, oh, we can give it away. And there's that. I came before we were married. I was a minimalist. I had a 1-bedroom condo with almost nothing in it. And then now we live in a
that's changed since I
big house. And she's more of a she does lovely decorations, and that's great. But I'm less stuff. She's more stuff. But I was just thinking, if I was really struggling financially, I can imagine with a lot of couples. I mean, it's a crazy time, Dane. Like with inflation going up, I just see the prices. The cost of living is so expensive. I'm in Chicago. The cost of living is so expensive. So many people on fixed salaries. They must be really struggling. And I think isn't that one of the biggest challenges in marriage is finances, right? Especially when if you guys are kind of struggling a little bit, I can imagine that's the biggest issue for a lot of couples is how you decide to spend your money. And you had some really some great points on that.
Yeah, we talk about that. So in fact, I'm a psychology major. I love stuff like this. I love looking at behaviors. And I can't remember the study, but we studied this frequently when I was going to school. They called it the 3 horsemen. If you bring it into if you bring one of these 3, as you bring more of these 3 things into a marriage, your likelihood for divorce goes through the roof. So the 3 things were getting married young, which once again, I'm a proponent of, but generally speaking, that's not a win. Getting married young, bringing debt into the relationship, and not agreeing on finances or your financial trajectory or how to spend money. I believe are the 3. I might be entangling those last 2, but long story short, that's the idea. And so I think everyone in a relationship has been there where your spouse bought something and you're like, what were you thinking? You know what I mean? When we got married, my wife is a nurse. She doesn't practice anymore, but she was solely supporting us while I was looking for a job. And my birthday was coming up, and I loved playing billiards. I love shooting pool. I did it. I was on the college team at my university. It's a ton of fun. I love doing that. And I wanted a pool table for my birthday. I wanted a pool table. And so I went and I bought this pool table for $400. To us, that was a lot of money at the time. Bought this pool table. In my mind, it was a deal because I got it at a discount. It's a premium pool table. I was going to go and like rehab this pool table and fix it up, which I did, and it turned out incredibly. But my wife at the time, she's the sole income earner, and I'm spending the money that she's earned. And she's like, what the fuck have you done? You know what I mean? and so I've thought about that a lot over the years. We both had things where we both done that, right? And so here's how we've tackled that. Because the fact of the matter is it's going to continue. I know without a doubt in my mind, I am going to buy things that my wife would not prefer I buy. And I know that she's going to do the same. I know it. And so what could I do to create space to be able to make that behavior okay? And this is what we've done. So we have a joint account that's like our bills, like our fixed bills. So mortgage, rent, car payments, gas, groceries, going out to eat money, all that type of stuff goes into the joint account. And we are generally aligned on what that money's for and how we're going to spend it, right? And then we each have our own personal accounts. And if you have money in your personal account, you can freaking spend it however you want. I can come home with a pool table. If I determine out of my personal account that I spent money to go do that, my wife can go and buy a trip or, whatever else that's really important to her. And I can feel fine about that because we've budgeted for it, right? It's part of the budget that my wife has freedom to go and spend money on things that she wants, and me as well. and I don't feel a pressure to go and look at the budget or look at the bank account when she comes home with something that I feel like is frivolous, because I'm like, oh, we've already factored that in. She's going to do whatever she wants with that, and it makes her happy. And so I'm with it, and that's worked out beautifully. I would add another level to this, and you've got this isn't for everybody. I want to qualify it that way. Uh, if you, I'll give you another story. My dad's an entrepreneur. He has a landscape architecture firm that he owns. My mom worked in the school system as a paraeducator. She retired about 5 or 10 years ago. And when she retired, my parents decided that my dad would have my mom come work for him. And that was a terrible idea. And absolutely, that was their worst idea they've ever had in their life, I think. And so she did. And my mom has a closeness to my dad that nobody in the office possesses, but she is the person in the office that knows the least about the business. And so she is in this position where she feels like she should be able to make decisions in the business because of her closeness to my dad, but she's the one least equipped to do so because she lacks the experience or knowledge about the business, right? And so I think that's really important to weigh if you're an entrepreneur, how you will manage that moving forward. Because my wife, similarly, I love her to death. She has a high level of closeness and proximity to me, but she doesn't know shit about the business. I mean, she knows at a high level what I tell her, but she can't make like a good business decision because she doesn't know. She just doesn't have the information readily available to her to be able to say, hey, does this purchase here make sense or not? Does this marketing spend make? And she never will, frankly, because I would never bring my wife into my business because I know from experience how we work, that we work very differently. And it's not a good thing when we work on the same business together. So she ran our dog breeding operation. I run the crypto and the real estate, and it's awesome. And it works really well for us that way. And so I'm in the driver's seat to make the business decisions that need making. So I have bought things that I know would have scared the shit out of my wife had she known what I was paying for marketing spend or coaching or whatever, but I knew it was the right next business decision. And had I consulted her, she would have said, don't do it. But once again, she didn't have the information to be able to be a good decision maker and weigh in on that. And so I think it's really important to determine with your spouse how you're going to manage things if you're an entrepreneur. And I would heavily advocate for some space unless you're both in the business can make good informed business decisions. I would heavily advocate for some separation there because of the reasons I mentioned already.
No, totally. Dane, going back to the three horsemen, the getting married young, do you think because, as we spoke earlier, you haven't, if you get married young, most people haven't really figured out what drives them in life, what they're really, what's more important to them. So if they get married, say in your early 20s, then by your early 30s, you could be quite a different person in that one decade.
You will be a different person. I guarantee it, right?
So I guess the risk is that you're gonna grow apart in mindset. Is that right? That's probably what they're thinking.
Well, and if you're getting married younger, I think you got to be, your prefrontal cortex that helps your decision making isn't fully developed till you're 25, right? So you're not even a great decision maker until you're 25, theoretically.
Right.
And so with that being the case, it makes, from that perspective, the literature, I think it makes a ton of sense to not get married young. So I get it from that perspective. I think that if marriage is something that you want, and I'm telling you, like, you need to want it for the right reasons. I have a friend that we've made here in Puerto Rico, where I live now, where they got married, and his wife is like a trophy wife, where she stays at home and she takes care of the kids, and she's beautiful, right? And all the things with like a traditional trophy wife that you think of. And he essentially lives his life like a bachelor otherwise. Like, he goes to Miami for a month, they don't come. and he expects her to take care of all the kids. There's this enormous imbalance of power in their relationship. And if that were my relationship, I wouldn't stay in it. Like that's not how I think. Oh, did I freeze?
No, no, I've got you. But Dane, what you said is so interesting about the availability now as you get older. So I think that advice, I couldn't agree with you more. I've heard it too. And that was kind of my experiences. I was kind of a bachelor playboy when I was younger, and I had all this money, and I didn't even think about marriage until I got all my goals that I wanted to do before. But looking back, I think I would have been so much more successful if I had my wife in my life, because she would have been
Mhm.
inspiration or support. I always thought when I had kids, I thought I would lose my motivation. And that was actually one of my biggest fears of being a dad. And then I remember when I first became a dad, I went for a long run and I was kind of alone with my thoughts. And I thought, man, I feel more inspired than ever. Like I have a reason now. I have a motivation. I have someone who's going to look to me for guidance, someone I want to show through my actions, not through my words. So for me, it was an incredibly inspiring thing.
It's beautiful. I agree. That's my experience as well.
Yeah. But yeah, and I think if the problem is if you have that mindset where I'm going to chase as many girls as I can and get it out of my system, like you said, I don't think as a man you'll ever get it out of your system. And
No.
it's taking you further and further away from the very different life of being a family man. I see it with myself because I still see my single friends and I see the way they live and I see the way I live. And it's a very you're putting yourself in different situations and you get pleasure from different things. And not to say, listen, I had great times before I met my wife, as a bachelor. It was fun, but it's a different kind of satisfaction. It's almost like the difference between hedonistic fun and then deep satisfaction from doing something difficult. That's probably the closest I could compare it to. And I think the biggest message that I'm trying to tell my single friends is that I wish I could have told myself when I was single is I had a very negative view of family, like the fun and life is going to stop when I become a family man. So I have to get all the fun out first. And I think that's such a bad approach because I think it's a different level of fun. Of course, you have more responsibility, but I think I'm infinitely happier now than I was 5 years ago.
And I think you nailed that. There's a big difference between like happiness and fun. There's a lot of things that you can do that are fun. There is nothing that you can compare to the love that you have for your own child. And you'll never be able to know what that's like without experiencing it firsthand.
Yeah.
And I've seen with so many of my friends, like having a committed relationship and getting married, and not necessarily having to have kids, but like a committed relationship and getting married, having kids, like it's woken a lot of them up to a place where they would say a lot of the same things that you're saying is they're like, man, I just like this happiness that I feel. I didn't realize that I could feel this. And I'm telling you, I would agree. Are you more interested in fun or are you interested in happiness and peace? And if you're interested in happiness and peace, I would tell you that you can get there so much faster by getting a committed relationship and considering building a family than you can, chasing a bunch of girls. And I get it, right? Like I'm red-blooded like everybody else. I love chasing girls around when I was single. I didn't do it for very long because I got married fairly young, but like I get it, right? And I get it, but I knew in my heart, and I felt very much so that God had a plan for me that I needed to be focusing on happiness and peace and not just fun. And that's led me to paths that frankly I I pinch myself. Like seriously, we were at an event in Cancun, speaking at an event in Cancun just a few days ago, and I was telling one of the guys there, I said, if I could go back a decade and I could tell my younger self where we're at today and what we're doing, I could tell you the interaction right now. I'd be like, are you serious? Like we really got married. We really have these three kids. We have a business that makes X number of dollars. Like we live on an island. Are you serious? Like I would be so pumped
Mhm.
to hear that. And I feel like that's largely attributed because of the habits and behaviors that I've built, earlier 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And my life would be very different had I not built those habits and leaned into the life that I have now.
I think last thing on this, because I do want to talk about the crypto side, but I think if you think about how we evolved in small groups and then towns, it would the availability of options for your wife or your spouse or your partner if you wanted to raise a family, they were just so small, and
Right.
our brains are not used to the fact that we have thousands of people we can just swipe. This online dating, I think, it's just completely messed our brains up, and I don't think we
Well, it's
have the
wild.
yeah, I don't think we have the ability to cope adequately, and I think that's what's causing all these problems. I mean, if you look at every metric, the last decade, they're all going the wrong way. You know, depression, anxiety, all these different health metrics, they're all going the wrong way, and I think a lot of it is due to the fact that more and more people are single and they're having real trouble in this dating pool, you know, finding the right person. And I think it's a part of it is just that there's too many options. But let me ask you this.
Well,
You
and
said,
really quick, I watched
oh,
a podcast. Okay, so let me like I think some of your listeners okay, so if I'm a listener and I'm single and I'm talking to I'm hearing you and I talk right here. The question in my head is I'm like, okay, I want a committed relationship. I can't tell you how many of my single friends are like I feel like I'm a good catch and I want a committed relationship. There's so many people out there that will tell you those two things, but they can't seem to find somebody, right? And I listened to a podcast. I thought this was great. So God forbid something happened to my wife and I entered the dating pool again. This is exactly what I do. I would go and I would, if I lack the skills, I would go and I would spend the money. I listened to this guy where he hired a developer to go and harness these dating apps where it did the filtering and sorting for him. So like he built a criteria. It would do the swiping for him. So you're not doing the swiping behavior that we could talk for hours about, the scrolling and swiping, how it's unhealthy. But essentially, it did all the filtering for him, or the majority of it. So by the time he actually got to a date, it theoretically was a higher caliber person, and he didn't have to spend all this time to go and find somebody. And then frankly, like I would lay out my cards pretty quick. You know, this is what I'm looking for, this is who I am, this is where I consider going. And then you got to be freaking flexible. Like trying to let somebody, my wife and I talk about this a lot. Like if I were me today, trying to be flexible enough to let somebody else into my life and be willing to make room for somebody, like be hard. You know what I mean? Like that would be hard. And you've got to be really flexible and open to adapting and changing. So yeah, if it were me, that's exactly what I do.
so glad you said that, because I see it with myself and I see it with other people. As you get older, naturally you get more stuck in your ways. And when you're
Totally.
young, you're less stuck in your ways. So of course it's easier to adapt and to cut in someone else's life and build something when you're more flexible. But as you get older and more stuck in your ways, it's just harder for you. Little things will annoy you more, and it's harder for you to be flexible and allow someone in. So I'm really glad you said that. Dane, can I ask you, what is your view? Like, what does money mean to you? Because obviously it's given you this incredible flexibility to live on an island, which I'd love to talk about too. But how would you describe what money means to you?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think you have to look at it as just a tool for opportunities and experiences. And I love the. Have you seen the? I can't remember who said this. I saw it on a short, and it just like blew me away when I saw this video. And they said a lot of people tell me that money doesn't buy happiness. And he said what I tell them is I said, well, you need to give more of it away then. And I loved that. I freaking loved that. And I would completely agree that money can be such a powerful tool for good if you recognize it as such. So a tool to be able to have cool experiences with your family. And I like nice things too. I sports cars, watches, you know, I'm cool with I like all that stuff. I think it's great. But in the end of the day, I want to make sure that I keep my focus on the idea that the money is a tool, and God gives us, I feel like God gives us opportunities to make money. And if He's blessed you with skills and ability to do so, or if you're on the path to building those skills and abilities to be able to make considerable money, then He has a purpose and a plan of you to do good in the world with that money. You don't need to waste it in a strip club. I know a guy had spent $1 million in a strip club last year,
Jesus.
bananas, you know what I mean? There's so much good you can do. And I'm telling you, if you have not had the experience of changing someone's life because of the money that you were blessed with, I would welcome you. In fact, it's coming up to Christmas time. Whether you celebrate Christmas or not, this is what I'd welcome you to do. If you've never done this, go do it. Like I'm telling you, it will. I hope that it changes your life forever, like it did mine. So when we were kids, I remember we went and we didn't have a lot growing up. I remember my mom will say, she'll tell you, she said that she would save to go to the dollar movie. So we didn't have a ton of money growing up. And I wouldn't have known it. Like, I had a great growing up and my parents were great people. And I'm really blessed in that respect. And I remember feeling very what's the word? Like most kids, right? Demanding, right? Why don't we have this? Why can't I get that? Very demanding. And I remember this one Christmas, and we went out. There's this family that didn't live too far from us, and I think we found out about them from church. I think it was through church, and we found out they just, all I knew, my parents told us they just don't have much. And man, and we're gonna give them a Christmas. Yeah. And we did. And it wasn't a lot, once again, we didn't have a ton of stuff, but I remember going to I think we just went to Walmart. Now you can go to Amazon. So if you choose to do this yourself, you could optimize it. You're going to miss the personalized aspect. So I'd recommend not totally skipping. If you want to order a bunch of stuff on Amazon and send it to them, we've done that as well. But man, we went there, and if you have kids, do this with them. We went there and we dropped off, clothes and a few toys and some food on the doorstep. We knocked on the door. And and we just hid. We just hid to watch. Yeah. And it wasn't anything like we probably spent, a few $100s at Walmart. Like it was things that you and I wouldn't think anything of to go buy today. And man, I did not anticipate this today. The mom, she opens the door and she just starts crying. And that really changed my perspective and how I looked at the things that we had and we didn't have. It didn't make me much less demanding at that age, but it changed everything. And I learned the power that money could be if you use it for good. So if you have not had an experience where you've learned that money can be a powerful tool for good, go do that this Christmas. Go find somebody, and I hope it changes your life too.
That's beautiful, brother. Yeah, one of my big pet peeves is people that talk negatively about money. And you said it perfectly. Money is a tool, and it can be used to do great things, or it can be used to, not that there's anything wrong that guy that spent $1 million in strip clubs. No, sure those strippers appreciated the money, but yeah, you can't have blanket statements on money. And the other thing about money, too many people link money and happiness. They're broken, miserable, and they think if I can just make money, it's going to make me happy. But the reality is, if you're broken happy, you're probably going to be wealthy and happy. And if you're broken miserable and you make some money, you're probably going to be wealthy and miserable. So I think that's such a good thing to remember. Is it's almost like the Stoic philosophy. It's not about what you have in your life that's going to give you these emotions. It's your mindset and your approach, and just being grateful for what you do have. Because one of my favorite sayings, Dane, is about health. And it says, a healthy man wants 1,000 things and a sick man just one. And I think about that all the time because it's so true. If you don't have your health, nothing else matters. But if you have your health, then you do want 1,000 things.
Totally. I I saw this store and I thought this was good. New York investment banker that's incredibly wealthy goes on vacation to a tropical island, and there's a fisherman there that he meets on the beach, and he says, oh, like how long were you fishing today? And he said, oh, I went fishing for 3 hours this morning. And he said, oh, how many fish did you pull? And he tells him, he says, well, let me tell you, if you go out, right, and instead of fishing for 3 hours, you could fish for 8. You could bring in almost triple what you did today. And the guy says, okay, well, what would I do then? Well, you would make enough money. You could get a second boat, and then you could even double what you're doing there. And he said, okay, well, then what? Well, then I could help you. I'm an investment banker, and I could help you get a fleet of ships so you could increase your profits even further. And then he said, okay, well, then what? And then the story ends. He says, well, then you could move to a tropical island like this and lie on the beach and hang out with your wife and kids all day. And the fisherman looks at him and says, I do that already. And I thought that was a great perspective. Why are you doing what you're doing? And I think this is important. Some people, and I am one of these people, I feel like God has put this insatiable hunger in my heart to build businesses and generate revenue. And I feel like he's got a bigger purpose for that money and what to do with it. So you've got to determine what your skills are and your path, what God has in store for you. If you're someone like me, then you go and you build. And that's what we do. And I love doing that. And if that's not you, that's totally fine. It doesn't need to be. You just need to find your path and play your role in that path. And you'll figure out the money part naturally. And the lifestyle part is you just keep playing the game.
Mhm. Yeah, I think having a balanced approach with finances is so important because on the one end, I hate the people that say, "Oh, money's the root of all evil, and I'm just going to stay broke." I think so much of life they're going to miss out on because they won't have the access and the means to have it available to them. But on the other end of the spectrum, you have people that are so focused on money to buy things that they don't need that they're going to miss out on their kids growing up, and then maybe they'll realize when they're in their 60s, man, I spent the best decades of my life, chasing wealth that I don't need, and now my kids have left, and what was it all for? So I think trying to balance that for me, it's always about the opportunity cost of money because money provides freedom, which is incredible, but there is an opportunity cost to money. So if it's taken all your time, and being a father, it's been wonderful for me because before I didn't value my time so much, but now I'm thinking, wow, if I can't get home and I have to work late, then I can't take my son to the park, and that's not ideal. So I realized the cost of things is much more apparent. So that's been really wonderful.
And it goes so fast. It
Yeah.
goes so fast. I had a dream the other night. I told my wife about it, and it was so impactful. I dreamed that I was able to be where I'm at today, but to be able to go back in time and experience my kids when they were younger again. And it was so fun in this dream. My little boy was 3 again, and we were reliving, that age. We were having these experiences with him, with me having the perspective that I know him now,
Right.
and it was beautiful. And I woke up, and I don't have this often, but I woke up and I felt devastated. I felt devastated that it wasn't real and that I couldn't go back, and I can't experience that again. And I only have a good solid 10 to 15 years before my kids are likely grown and gone. And it goes, I mean, my oldest is 9. It's gone so fast. And so my wife, she's like, if business goes really well and you hit some of the goals you hope to hit in this next year, what do we do? And I said, honestly, like, I'll keep building because I love that. I feel like it's part of who I am, but I want to build a lifestyle in such a way, like, where I want to drink deeply from this opportunity that we have the kids at home now. They're not going to want to hang out with me probably just 3 or 4 more years when they're teenagers. Like, how could I lever the time with them now? Because gosh, it goes quick, and I want to try to do that.
Every every friend I have with all the kids tells me the same thing. They say, Lawrence, enjoy it because the years go so quickly. So that's
And let me have a caveat to that. One of the things that people have said over and over and over that's a lie, and they'll say, "Oh, it only gets harder as they get older." Look,
it gets easier. They get more reliant, right? More
it's
self-reliant.
been ours has been the opposite. They're like, enjoy every moment. Look, there's going to be a lot of moments as a parent that you hate. that you feel like you could throw that little rascal in the ditch and walk away and not feel bad about it. There's going to be a lot of freaking times where you feel that way, and that's all right. There's no reason to feel guilty about it. There's no one that'll push your buttons like your darn kids. But gosh, the moments that are good and when you're happy and when you're able to be present and focus on those times, like drink from those deeply because they'll be gone. And so, how can you have more of those opportunities? That's what that's what I want to try to factor in. And one more tip I'll build in for you. We've talked about family. I think this is really important. I watched the podcast. They said build a system so that your kids aren't, or he said, if you build the right system in your family, your kids won't beg for things and their behaviors will generally be the behaviors that you want. And I thought, oh, that sounds great. My kids are good kids, but like, just like you, they're always asking for the next prize, the next thing, always, until more recently. And so we build out a system where my kids, they have the opportunity to earn $1 a day. That's what their allowance is at stake every single day. If they, and we vote as a family at the end of the night. You need to get the majority of the votes. We have 5 people. You need to get the majority of the votes to say yes, to earn your dollar. And so it's good because they're naturally like, they can't go off and be a dick to the other 2 that day because they'll vote no. And I remind them, if you keep this up, do you think she'll vote for you when we vote tonight? Oh no. I'm like, well, you better get it. You better figure it out then, right? Oh, and I'll go over and apologize. Like, it's so reinforcing. It's beautiful. So they've got to have our criteria is really pretty simple. I want you to have a good attitude. We don't whine and we treat each other well. And what's our 4th thing? And we help out when mom and dad ask for help. So like cleaning up, chores, things like that. That's it. Very simple. And it's very apparent at the end of the day when we vote, hey, did this kid, who would vote for this kid today? Who would vote for this kid, right? And on the days when it's no, it's impactful and it hurts. It hurts. It hurts them bad. And that's good. I want it to hurt because that's what life is. Welcome to not getting a reward. It hurts. And so let's talk through why it hurts. Let's talk about why you didn't accomplish this. Let's talk about how we can change your behaviors so that you win more frequently. And my kids, I'm telling you, and then they've got to get 5 out of 7 days where they earn their dollar out of the week to earn a family date at the end of the week. We go out and we just do like movie and ice cream or pizza and ice cream, whatever. It doesn't matter, whatever you want to do for your family. But they have to get 5 out of 7 days. And I'm telling you, when they get 4, and they're the only one that misses out, it hurts. It hurts bad. And I want it to. I want it to hurt bad. I want it to be, look, you can't miss. You shouldn't miss. In our family, we don't miss. And if you do, it's going to hurt and you'll remember it. So I think I've only had 1 kid ever miss. And the other 2 are like, well, that looks awful. and nobody's missed since. And it's been beautiful where we don't, my kids are far from perfect, but it's changed the behaviors in a big way where we largely, for the most part, get the behaviors that I want and the others I don't are heavily mitigated.
Yeah, I think that's you're aligning good behavior and the incentives. And I think that's the biggest problem right now. And a lot of the political things that drive me nuts is because you don't have the right incentives. I think that's so.
Right. I agree.
So
I agree.
Important. Dane, so let me tell you a little bit about my crypto background because I think it's relevant, and I'd love to talk a little bit before we wrap this up about crypto. So I was a finance guy who moved from finance to real estate, and I'd hear people talking about Bitcoin for a long time, and I couldn't get my head around the block. I didn't never know what blockchain was, and it was always kind of like, I think that's
the hardest first step is just like wrapping your head around what this crazy internet money thing is. And I agree with you. Yeah, I was there. I understand. Go ahead.
But then a few years ago, I finally took the time. I actually heard a podcast from Anthony Pompliano, and he just laid it out really well. And it clicked in my brain. And then I spoke to a couple of people, and I was like, I really get this. So I read some books, and I was like on the philosophy of decentralized currency. And, I knew about the historic inflation and the fact that we're losing purchasing power from the dollar. So all the dots connected for me. And I was like, I am all in. And I went very aggressively in. And unfortunately, it was right when it was kind of ramping up and when it went to, I think went to 69,000 was the high, and then it went all the way down to about 14,000 or whatever it was.
Yeah, you
And
bought the top.
I was buying into the top, and then I did buy a little bit at the bottom again, but I had to sell a whole bunch at a horrible price because we found a beautiful home to raise the family and we moved out of the city. So, that's just, bad luck, I guess. But the one question I have is, because I've heard you talking about this before, and I know you and Nick talked about this, is so many people are talking about how this is the next 12 months is kind of the next bull cycle. But I guess my question, I'd love you to two things, Dane. If you could just give a background summary of why you like Bitcoin and crypto for kind of a layperson. I know it's always tough to do, but and then
No, I'm good at this. I do this all day. I can give you a quick and dirty. Yeah, no
quick and
problem.
dirty. And then, but the thing that I think is, I think as you get more widespread adoption, so now you're having these, big hedge funds and things investing in Bitcoin, it's not gonna keep having the same huge cyclical moves as it becomes more widespread, adopted more widespread. So I guess I'm a little, and it seems like we're in a very weird time where it used to be it would move differently from other things, and now I feel like all asset classes are moving together. If things are good in the economy, then crypto and stocks and real estate all go up together. So I feel like it's become less of a hedge. And then the last thing, I'm sorry, I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but I have the idea of developing a real estate development fund, because I do a lot of real estate development, and I have outside investors for private projects, and I would love just to pool the capital so I have more flexibility and I can move quicker. And I actually thought about initially doing like 95% real estate with 5% crypto or 10%, because I think they work very well together. Crypto has the explosive upside. Real estate is slow and steady, has the tax benefits. And a friend of mine who's a big crypto guy too, he's the one that told me, I was just kind of bouncing some ideas off him last week. And he said, Lawrence, I don't think you should do that, because crypto's moving with things. It's not going to be a hedge. They could both do very well together, or they could both do badly together. So he didn't like the idea. So I'm sorry, I know I threw a lot at you, but I'd love to pick your brain on.
No, yeah, let's
that.
go one thing at a time. Yeah. Okay. So if a lot of people have heard the terms crypto and likely blockchain, but have no idea what those two things are. So let me give you just a really high level, oversimplified version of what those two things are. Crypto was born out of the 2008 financial collapse. The reason that the financial collapse occurred is because banks were able to do bad deals with each other, and the public had no idea. No idea until things went south. And guess who was left to pay the tab? We the people. In fact, the government invited the bankers in that created the whole mess in the first place and said, how should we fix this? It's like your kid went and robbed a candy store, and then you go to him and you say, how do you fix this? And the kid says, well, give me more candy. And then you say, that sounds like a great idea. That's exactly what they did. And nobody went to jail. Not a single banker went to jail, but they sure had a lot of people that committed suicide over that. And that's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. So that's where crypto was born out of, is rather than the banks and the venture capital firms having the ability to do these ugly backdoor deals, you have blockchain that was born, where blockchain is a technology where essentially it's just a big spreadsheet. It's a ledger, and it's public, and it's beautiful. And the reason that it's beautiful is for two main reasons. The one is that it's public in nature. So we get to see, they can't do ugly backdoor deals on the blockchain. We can go in and see what's going on there. And the second is that there's not the ability for humans to come in and print money. They can't counterfeit money. They can't limit our ability to transact. In fact, I think a great example, how old are you, Lawrence?
45.
Oh, yeah. So you were around. I remember when LimeWire and Napster came out.
Yep.
Are you, so for those of you that are too young to remember that, LimeWire and Napster came out, and that was our first ability to go in and download primarily music on the internet. And that was our first jump in, and it was incredible. Incredible. And then the government shut all that down. You tell me, Lawrence, is it more or less available content? Is it more or less available to download something for free, anything you could ever want on the internet today than it was 10 years ago?
Definitely much easier.
It's more, exactly. And so I get these people that are like, oh, what if the government wants to come shut it down? Well, I've got news for you. The only way they shut crypto down is if they turn the internet off. If they turn the internet off, you better have bullets and guns and food storage, because all bets are off. And that's it. And so it's a beautiful thing where we can transact 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in a currency that can't be counterfeited, can't be printed into oblivion, and all the deals are public. That's it. That's it. And so that's the blockchain technology. And then you have cryptocurrencies within that. Now, I'm not going to dive into different blockchains and all that type of stuff, but to suffice it to say that you just have different cryptocurrencies. And these, I would argue, are largely experiments on different forms of money and ideas. It's a really cool form of expression. And you get to decide with your own money what experiment you want to participate in. Many have shown to be very profitable, and far more have been shown to be the opposite, to be pump and dumps where you lose your money. And so if you educate yourself about how this stuff works and you start to learn and you build a framework, in fact, we have a framework that we give to all of our members where we can come in and we could say, hey, if we look at stuff through this framework, through these five, we have five main things I want to look at. If we see these five main things, if this new cryptocurrency checks all five boxes, well, we haven't bought anything that's gone to zero or been a scam in the last 3 years, as long as we've used that criteria and it's checked all of our boxes. So if you can do that, then you could participate in some of these monetary experiments that can be incredibly profitable and change things forever. So that is fundamentally where crypto was born and the basics of what it represents. And so let's move on to the next part where I am with you. I am not a big advocate, but let me clarify one thing. I'm not a big Bitcoin guy. I'm not. We are very much, make no mistake about it, cryptocurrency is the technology space. Riddle me this, Lawrence. When was the last time that you used a 16-year-old technology in your life outside of Bitcoin?
Can't think about it.
I bet you don't use anything that's that old today. Most people don't either. Bitcoin is 16 years old at this point.
Yeah.
So it is relevant, in my opinion, because it is the first and it has enormous first mover advantage. And I'm grateful for it because it built the stage that the rest of crypto is formed and fashioned after. But you nailed it. You are not early to Bitcoin. No one's getting rich from it. I think best case scenario from where we're at right now, call Bitcoin roughly, for easy round math sake, we are getting closer to 70K. Call it 70K. We're a little bit under, but for easy math sake, let's call it 70. I think best case scenario, from here till about a year from now, the next top should be somewhere between October and December of 2025. So there's a nugget for you. If you hold crypto, you are a fool not looking at selling. I'm selling freaking everything near the end of 2025. All of it. I am not holding anything because kind of like you said, Lawrence, the crypto is very much so tied to everything else. If the stock market goes down, so does crypto. If the economy performs poorly, so does crypto. Now, there could be this event where that changes, but I'm not willing to bet very much money on that outcome. So here's some of the mistakes I see a lot of new users make. They get wrapped up into the utility and life-changing technology and things of that nature. And I've got news for you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't. It doesn't. Some of the coolest technology, the best utility in all of crypto and all of decentralized finance, guess how some of those charts have performed? They're down 99% from the last crypto cycle top, many of them.
Wow.
Some of the best tech, Aave, for instance, like a decentralized bank. In my opinion, some of the best tech there is in crypto, period, down 99%.
Wow.
Some like GMX, where you can go and leverage trade. Now, I'm not an advocate for that. You can lose your shorts quick. So I wouldn't go do that. But it's really cool in that it produces passive income for the holders. You hold the token, you get a kind of like a crypto. It's a crypto dividend, kind of like a stock dividend. It's a beautiful use case. Down 90%. So the utility doesn't matter. So I'll tell you what does matter. Here's what matters. People care about new things. And most people, this is how you should treat it, but most people, when they walk into crypto, they act like it's a casino and they're throwing money on the roulette table and hoping with their friends.
100%.
And that's fine. If you want to go to Vegas and you want to do that with your friends, I get how it can be a lot of fun. If you're in the business of losing money on the basis of fun, there's lots of ways you can do that. I am not. I'm here to make money. And you've got to understand that if that's most people's framework, they're walking into crypto and treating it like a casino. Well, imagine somebody like you that has trading experience. You've got a level of sophistication that 99% of people in crypto could only dream of having. They could only dream of it. Somebody like you walks in and you're like, oh, if I apply some of the same frameworks that work in real estate, work in other markets, if I apply those loosely here and I have a framework, it doesn't mean you're going to leave unscathed, but I can tell you this much. I think that it leaves you in a place where you're very likely to win in a very significant way over the next year. And so that's how we play the game is what do the market care about? Well, this cycle, they've cared about memes. And that's it. They haven't bought any utility stuff. Utility's been a waste of money. And I wish I wouldn't have put any of my money in utility stuff. I wish I could have gone back and put it all into memes because that's the stuff that's moved. And I saw a really great video of this dude that spoke at a crypto conference more recently. I can't remember his name, but they call him they call him Crypto Jesus for his screen name. He got up there on stage and he talked for 30 minutes about meme culture and how you see elevated levels of depression and loneliness and anxiety today. And the conclusion that he drew is that people come and they come to crypto and they come to fulfill some of those things. And I can't tell you how many people they find their place in a crypto community. They make friendships. They get rid of anxiety and loneliness because of these friendships and communities. And so what matters is simply something interesting that people can come together around. And usually, I don't know if you saw this video that was floating around more recently. I thought it was great. So there's a meme coin that came out this cycle. It's called Dog with Hat. Have you heard of this one?
No.
Okay, it's a meme coin. Literally, it's a little dog with a hat. That's it. There's nothing else to it. That's it. It's a dog with a hat. Nothing else that's going on. That's it. And so this guy wandered around. He had the dog with hat symbol, has the symbol of dog with hat, and then he has the symbol for Ethereum. And he wandered around to the general public and he says, okay, tell me which one you'd pick. This one, Ethereum, is cool. It has all these use cases. It could do all these things. It could solve problems of the world. That's this one. Or this one, it's just a dog with a hat. That's it. There's nothing else to it. It's just a cute dog with a hat. Which one would you choose? They always chose the freaking dog with the hat. Every time. And it speaks to human behavior and where interest in general goes. And I'm telling you, like, it's with those things. So my portfolio is, I've got a ton of meme coins that I own, but I have most of my money in things that are newer blue chips that meet my 5 criteria that I think will smash it this bull run. And then I've got my other meme plays. And I think you find a nice balance between those because that, make no mistake about it, I think that the economy probably starts to crumble, and we've already seen cracks, and I think it starts to crumble near the end of next year. In fact, I don't know if you know this data, but real estate tends to cycle. Crypto cycles on 4-year cycles. Real estate tends to cycle on about 18-year cycles. It's really interesting how these two coincide, where the next crypto top should be the end of next year and the next real estate top should be 2026. That's when we should start seeing real estate fall apart. So I am very much planning to be sitting on cash on the side at the end of next year and being very selective of the opportunities, because I think if you have money, they will be plentiful.
Well, Dane, let me ask you. So here's what I've been thinking about recently, and I know we don't have too much longer, but this is fascinating. So if you price real estate in terms of gold, it's actually incredibly cheap right now compared to a few years ago, right? If you price real estate in terms of Bitcoin, it's incredibly cheap the last decade. So
if you price it in anything but the dollar, it's cheap.
Exactly. So that's kind of the way I look at real estate is, we've got estimates between 8 and 20 million illegals have come in. They all need housing. Since 2009, all the builders have been pulling back. So for the last 15 years, there's been all these long-term studies saying we're going to run out of housing. So you're going to have so much demand for housing, and I think that that's kind of a floor under the real estate market in terms of dollars. But you're right. In terms of if you price it in different assets, it has already had a big pullback. So it's a different way of looking at things. I'm trying to like look if you price the S&P in terms of gold, it looks very different to being in price in terms of dollars, you know. So I'm really trying to get my head around some of those concepts, and it's really hard for people to, but I think it's really interesting. And we'll definitely talk more offline. I'd love to talk more about some of these projects because I feel like I really believe in crypto, the philosophy behind it, and the idea of community with like-minded people who are libertarian and they believe in freedom, like personal sovereignty. But I know I've played the game quite badly because I wasn't investing in money that was just I didn't need. I was investing in money and then my life was changing and like, hey, I want to buy this dream home and hey, I want to buy this rental that my wife and I want to do. And so I haven't played it very well. And I think when you're investing, one thing I've learned, Dane, is there's two very different skills to making money and investing well. Making money is you can have a good skill at anything that people will pay you for. And investing is you have to have obviously have a bit of luck and you have to make good decisions and you can't be hampered by changing circumstances that make you pull out at suboptimal times. And I feel like that's been my biggest problem.
Yeah, and it's easy to fall into those traps. I mean, you can even know what the data is indicating and what's yet to come, and your emotions are still gonna like mess with you. It's really fascinating. So like I know right now that all of the data, or I should say all, but like the majority of the longer term data is screaming like shovel capital into crypto. But a lot of people won't because they're scared. And I get it because Bitcoin hasn't been doing anything for 7 months. It's just been going sideways and it might have another pullback to 48K. You know, I don't know. But man, what I can tell you is that when you go back and you look at the previous cycles, all of the real money was made when Bitcoin surpassed its all-time high, had a pullback, held it as support, and then went off again. And that's when you have these other altcoins go and do, I mean, it could happen in a month. I mean, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100x in a month. Like it can happen like this. And so with that being the case, there's so many ways that you can participate in crypto that make a lot of sense. Like I'll give you a few examples. Tyler in our community is a real estate investor, just like me and my partner Corey. In fact, we have many people that have and still are real estate investors in our community because that's where we come from, right? Mm. And here's the thing with real estate. Everybody in real estate wants better returns that are more passive because real estate is not passive. And let's be honest, the returns suck. Like, I want to be really honest about this conversation because all the real estate guys will be like, oh, let's go get a rental. Look, give me any other asset class, tax benefits aside, where it makes sense to go buy something that likely requires you to put down 50 to 100K to go make $300 a month, where one bad tenant can make you lose 100 months of passive income. 100 months. I know because I've done it. I freaking lost 100 months. And I was like, well, this one sucked. Like it doesn't make sense from that perspective. Now you factor in the tax benefits. I'm for it. I like the tax benefits and I like being money in big deals where you have scales of economy. That's, in my opinion, that's the way to do the real estate game. That's how I like it. I had 25 rentals. I've since sold all of them and I put my money in crypto. And here's why. And I'll tell you through a few experiences of Tyler in our community. So Tyler's a real estate investor. I talked to him about crypto about 18 months ago. I showed him some of the cool stuff he was doing. He took a leap in faith in coming and joining our community, but he trusted me because he knew some of my friends and we have a lot of people in common in our network. So he trusted me. He jumped in and we helped him get a hold and a handle of how some of these systems work. And he started making passive income. In fact, he took $5,000 in crypto, and there's right ways to do it, but he started making more. His best rental was making $700 a month, a single family house. Net, he started making more than that rental with just 5 grand on the blockchain, way more passively than he was in real estate. He was like, well, there's something here. And so he spent the time with us to be able to figure things out. He sold that rental. In fact, he sold it about 3 months ago. He took the 200 grand in equity that he made from it. He put it on the blockchain instead. Now, once again, we can talk about tax benefits. You don't get those in crypto. So those are gone. So if you need tax benefits, go buy real estate. I get it. But that aside, if we're looking at cash flow, he took that 200K instead of making $700 a month. He's now making 10 to 15K a month on autopilot while he sleeps on the blockchain with that money. And his capital's way more efficient in that respect. I'll give you another example. He also had a Honda Accord that he bought, 20K in cash. He locked it up. He sold the Accord. He put the 20 grand on the blockchain. Tesla ran a promo recently. You could get a new Model Y and finance it at like 3% interest or something crazy. His payments are just shy of $600 a month. And he's making about $1,500 a month on that 20 grand on the blockchain. So he goes and he pays his Tesla payment. He's essentially earning a free car. He's getting the appreciation on the capital because as it goes up, he also gets those. And he's getting the appreciation on any of the passive income that he doesn't turn around and sell. And so your capital, if you learn how to use these systems properly, can be treated so much more efficiently. Now, I want to qualify this during the bull run. During the bull run is the key. After the bull run, be careful. You can get shot in the foot so fast. You want to be really careful. Once again, I'm freaking selling everything at the end of 2025 is my plan. Take that for what you will. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't give financial advice. Haven't given that qualifier today. Everything that I talk about is for entertainment and informational purposes only. So you make your own decisions. Make your own financial decisions on what you feel good about. But man, in the bull run, you can print money and it is freaking bananas. And that's why I sold all my real estate. That's why I gave my little brother our 7-figure flipping wholesaling operation and left the industry, at least in the short term, because there is nothing like crypto. And if you do one crypto cycle right, just one, and we've only got about another year on this one. And the good news is that 90% of the profits are made after Bitcoin, once again, breaches all-time high, comes back and retests it, and we go. That's where 90% of the money is made. We haven't gotten there yet, but I think we're close. You can still participate in that part of the bull run. And if you're not, I feel sorry for you. Wait 4 more years. It'll take 4 more years till the game is back on. And as for me and my community and we are going to go and change our lives in the next year. And we're going to go and use those profits to go and buy more businesses, do philanthropic things, go on cool vacations, develop more cool friendships, and raise our kids in a way that's sustainable and that we're happy with. If you like that vision, I would love to talk to you.
What a beautiful way to end it. Thank you so much, Dane. I'm so glad we met. And it's so funny because
how random. This is great, man.
Well, but we could have started talking about this stuff and Bitcoin, but we went the other way, and you were talking about, using money for good and the joys of family. And I don't know, maybe it's because I'm at that stage in my life, but for me, I love talking about that stuff. And you inspired me to be a better dad, a better husband. And I'm so glad we connected, brother. This has been a treat, and we'll definitely do part 2 soon. Thank you, brother.